Oh, wow, it's great. My name's Gary Fowler, and it is great to have every one of you here today. And it's my great honor to introduce my good friend, the knower of all, the seer of seas, the grand poobah, the big kahuna, the Yoda, the master, my friend Kyle Ellicott. My name's Gary Fowler, by the way, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done 16 companies. I focus on artificial intelligence, and I love bringing the best and the brightest to each and every one of you from all corners of the universe. So with that, Kyle, it's so great to have you here. I've looked forward to the show for a long time, and I feel like you're part of the family. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I mean, this is definitely a family for sure, and same in return. I'm so honored to be here, and it's been months in the making, and here we finally are.
So you've done, I was looking at your journey. I mean, China, the small community college, Washington. How do you pronounce it? It's an Indian name. Washington Community College, to go to China, to Tokyo, to 99 articles. I mean, it's incredible. To an advisor, to venture capital. I mean, around the world and back at you. So what's the journey been like, Kyle?
It's been a ride. It's been fun. It's been
what is it, Mr. Toad's Excellent Adventure?
Yeah, it definitely. Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure for sure. It's been a journey. I go back to the community college I went to, and I grew up, in the Midwest. If you would tell me, decades ago, all of what I've been able to do and, people have been able to meet and life lessons learned, I never would have believed any of it. And shocking, because as a kid, I mean, this was something I wanted to do. I wanted to be a CEO at a very young age for some odd reason. It just was something I wanted to inspire to be. I always wanted to start companies. I always wanted to be ahead in technology. It was something that I always loved. And fast forward, here we are. So it's been a journey, that's for sure. It's been a journey.
You've been in China. Now, how did that come about? I mean, what's the China deal? Because you're over in China. How long were you there?
So I was in China for a couple of years, which tons of stories to share on that. Some of the best food I've ever had in the world. Some of the greatest stories I could share as well. But I started, I co-founded a startup accelerator in the Bay Area in 2013. And then in about 2015, early 2016, we expanded it to Southeast Asia. But at the end of 2015, before we expanded it, I actually had the chance to go visit Hong Kong for the very first time. I was welcomed over by an outstanding organization called Cyberport, who works hand in hand with the government and the local community and organizations to really foster innovation and education around technology as well. And they invited me to be a speaker and to be a judge at a startup competition. And
in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm. And this was my first time in Asia. I had been to Europe. I had been other places, first time in Asia. And I actually talked about this in my TEDx talk because it was so impactful to the future of where I am today. Is that I remember coming out of this plane, landing in Hong Kong, which was the longest flight I've ever taken, by the way. That was a very big experience of going 12 plus hours on a plane straight, but landed and walked off this plane and just saw this, saw the future in front of me, saw a world that was ever connected, saw a world that was leveraging technology in a way that we hadn't even thought about or seen yet in most cases in the States. And from there, just fell in love with this future of innovation and technology. And then I got to have a lot of good food. I got to meet a lot of good people. But
mentioning the food.
The food was so good. It was so good. I'm sorry.
You didn't have any snakes or kind of like strange kind of deals?
I never questioned it. I just ate it. But
it was tasty.
It was tasty. But I'll tell you, the people I met, the companies I worked with, both at the startup level as we end up running an accelerator program there. But then also those I worked with afterwards, and investors and family offices. I mean, still one of the greatest experience. And from an educational standpoint, I don't think I could have learned more than I did, having that opportunity. And it really brought to focus the idea of, going global, but acting local, and, how everything we do is so global, and how that is such an important part of our business and ourselves, but also acting local and giving back, whether you live or you work or you're building in the communities you're a part of. And part of my giving back and acting local was, being supportive in the Hong Kong community, and then later in China, and then back here in the US, and trying to give as much as I could for what I received as well.
So you went from there to what, Shenzhen? Is that where you went to? How long were you in Shenzhen?
I was in Shenzhen. So I split time between the two. So it was a couple of years between both Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And for those that don't know, it's a very short trip. I think it's about 50 minutes by taxi or by bus, which was the greatest hack I ever learned. And there's a bus that you can take that just gets you there, point A to point B, no problems. You just get on it, take a little nap, and you wake up and you're where you're supposed to be. So and it's easy, or it was, I should say. It was very easy to get there, cross the border, pick up a taxi and go where you needed to go on both sides.
Now, were there mentality differences between the folks in Hong Kong and China?
Yes, and there was also very big mentality differences from those here in the States as well. And a lot of it I'll break down from the entrepreneurial side. Mm-hmm. When I first started going there in 2015, entrepreneurship was still very new. The Hong Kong ecosystem or tech scene, but really the ecosystem was still in its infancy, and there were some outstanding individuals who I can name drop for days that were really focused on helping that and were a part of it. But it was in its early days, and part of its infancy was changing that mindset that entrepreneurship is something to do. It is something to be encouraged, and it's okay to go into that. And then second was not just entrepreneurship as that was more accepted than I initially thought, but it was the sense of failure. So, a company may not work out. So what to do if it doesn't work out, and that you can still move on afterwards and do something new. And then in China, it was entrepreneurship, and going and starting your first company and building your company and being supported in building that company. And then there was the model of raising capital and understanding how capital is raised, but at terms of valuations, and setting yourself to certain standards versus others. And there's definitely a different mindset, but it was also a very different culture, which was a huge learning process. As the culture in the US is one, very aggressive, very go, let's get it done. Call you and I can call each other. We can do a deal right now. And in Europe, it's slightly different. In Latin America, we know it's slightly different. And in Asia, it was very different for things that I had experienced before. And it just took time to get a lot more things done. And there was also an appreciation for that. It really taught the value of, establishing a relationship more than just a transaction.
So the relationship's really important in China. And how do you get that relationship? Is it through intermediaries, through friends, or how do you develop the trust?
Yeah, so definitely through those locally. So intermediaries is one, but definitely, for advice for those that are looking to go there is, find a partner, find whether it's a company, it's an individual, find a partner on the ground, and through that, start working through them to build your relationship. I mean, one of the ways that we did it and I did it is, this is a part of my history, is I just ingrained myself in the ecosystem. Worked with startups, talked to investors, shared my knowledge, shared my resources. Mm-hmm. From the company standpoint, we did the same, and then just continued to make friends as well as business contacts. And what you learn is the higher you get up, those come from other business relationships as well, right? To get to the top individuals at the top companies, it's hard to walk in and just say, "Hey, nice to meet you.
How are you doing?"
Right. Like you can in some cases in the Valley, right? Or in New York.
Yeah, of course. In the Valley, it's okay. So
it's okay.
It's hierarchical, right? You got to go up through. And So if somebody, so we have a lot of startups and a lot of VCs watching. If somebody wants to go to China, the lessons learned and going up the ladder, how do you do it the right way?
Ooh, great question. First off, before you even go through that process up the ladder, know why you're doing it and what you're looking to get in return. And also know your timeline. So know what you're getting. Going up to the CEO doesn't always make sense in other countries that I have found in my experience, as it may here in the US or it may in other places. So figure out who you're targeting, right? Who do you really want to get in touch with, and who holds the budget or who holds the partnership control of, again, what you're trying to do. And once you know that, then you can understand how to start to get to that particular person, whether it's, again, working through relationships that you may already have. So in the startup ecosystem, or it's, which in China and Shenzhen found that because it's so, well, it was small, now it's very big. There were so many of us that knew each other, and we were all kind of on that same journey, and everyone wants to talk and everyone wants to share, that it was actually easier to get into some of those rooms. Now, you have to be genuine. You have to show that you have value as you're looking to get value as well. And then timeline. Things do not happen very quickly, and that's okay. And you need to be accepting of that. And you also need to understand how to build that into your roadmap as well. And I think that's some of the mistakes that I and others have made as well, is like when you enter a new ecosystem in some sense, want to kind of just go 100 miles an hour, and you really need to take a step back and think through the process. And that's something we learn in our journey and in our careers, but also something that those that are listening should take away as advice today, is really take a pause before you go. And I'll just say this, and I'll pause in a minute, Gary, is that for anyone looking to go global, and by global, I mean, in this case, physically expanding into a global region, really understand why you're doing it. Understand the investment that you're going to have to put into it, both capital and human, and just general resources from the business. And also, how does it play into your current and future roadmap? Then start to move that. And when you do start to move into that process, look for local partners. I cannot stress that enough. Finding local partners and companies to work with who can help welcome you into that region, help guide you through some of those cultural differences, and also help guide you in your business success. Then once you get on the ground, start hiring local, again, giving back, as we said, and then you can start growing and getting more aggressive as a business would. But lots of lessons to learn.
So you were over there. What made you decide to come back?
A lot of things. Some of it was just time. What we were trying to accomplish had kind of come to its end. It also was just a lot of my job was coming back and forth as well. And so on my last journey, it was the holidays, and stayed here. And then we decided to kind of stay here for a little bit. And then unfortunately, things kind of got a little unrestful in the region, but I still did go back for a few different talks and things. And for me, it was also kind of a change of focus. Asia was just one part of the story. It wasn't the full story anymore. So kind of rebuilt that. And, some of the things that you and I have talked about offline, but also friends of our family, the bigger family that we have, have shown us the importance of not just China, not just Hong Kong, not just Southeast Asia, but the bigger picture of Asia, and then the bigger picture of Latin America and all these other regions and emerging markets that are there. So
now, we talked about this a few times, this idea. So, and I mean, China's fascinating, right? I was in Russia,
amazing.
And I mean, people were saying, oh, why would you go to Russia? And I would fly from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok, all the way down through Central Asia, all the way up north, to cities that were tiny, some large cities, Novosibirsk and Irkutsk, all over. And one of the things you do learn to value differences, right? And if you don't value differences, you're probably not the person that should be there, because there are immense amount of differences, and trust is a big thing, right, in those areas. And there's, I don't know what China's like, but in some areas of the world, there's a lot of suspicion coming in. There's always question, why would you want to be here? And it's like,
Well, and there was some outside suspicion. So on the China and Southeast Asia side, there was some outside suspicion of why would you want to go to an emerging market in this region, because on the flip side, there wasn't a lot of positive exposure to what was happening there, specifically around the ecosystem and the number of startups, the amount of venture capital, the amount of innovation, the amount of development, the talent. I mean, it just wasn't really talked about. So for many, it was a question of why. Because they just didn't know. And now, flip that script, there's a ton that's happening, right? You look at the number of unicorns that are companies or, companies with $1 billion+ valuation that are coming out of China or have in the past 5 years. It's phenomenal. At one point I was tracking it and it was well over 130 companies that had come out and that were still unicorns, right? These are companies that had not gone public that were double-digit $1 billion in valuations. And you look at what not just Hong Kong has done, but now look at where South Korea, where Japan, where Taiwan, Indonesia, which has one of the largest venture capital markets in the region that's growing. You have Vietnam, Thailand. You even have Macau. Macau actually has a very small but flourishing.
Oh, I didn't hear about that Macau. That's interesting.
People wouldn't know, but yeah, you would be very unassumed. So Macau is a fascinating, just to kind of go on a tangent there. Macau is in a very fascinating position. So it's very close right now with the bridge in Hong Kong. You can get there in about 25 minutes or by boat just under an hour. And that is a cornerstone piece of the Greater Bay region or Greater Bay area that China has put in place. But you can get there in 25 minutes from Hong Kong. And there's a ton of focus around of gaming and the casino industry and entertainment as well. But on the other side, it's also just over the border from, I believe, is Zhuhai as well, which is also a very flourishing industrial and commercial center. And so you actually have these two border points. So one from mainland Hong Kong and then other from mainland China that go right into it. And you have a ton, like 6 figures plus of people that come in and out of that country every day just for the entertainment factor. And yeah, and then when you pull in the whole Greater Bay Area.
Yeah, there's a lot of gambling. They love gambling.
Gaming is a huge part along with entertainment. But when you put that in the bigger piece of the whole Greater Bay Area, which is 11 cities, you've got a GDP that rivals most nations in just those 11 cities. Each have their own industrial or commercial focus as well that supports each other. You've got over 70 million and growing people in that region alone, which brings together essentially in one region with these 11 cities. I mean, that's putting together New York, San Francisco, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles in some cases, all in one region. That's pretty powerful. But anyways, I digress. So yes, Macau, but when you look back at the greater picture of Southeast Asia, you bring in India now is starting to see a ton of activity. There was just so much that was happening in the area. So
that's interesting. So, you touched a bit upon this idea of this digital transformation. And I know when we first met, I don't even know when it was now, February, March, April. What?
I think it was April. I think it was in April. Yeah, it was right when things turned. We had the chance to meet each other for the first time. And, I'm going to go on a tangent one more and this is leading into your point, I'm sure, but, we met at a time when if we had met in person, in fairness, we probably would have met once and maybe followed up once or twice afterwards and just touched base later in life. But now full circle, we see each other almost every single day. I feel lost in a day I don't see Gary Fowler. And so it's a totally
the same here,
world.
Kyle. The same here. It feels good.
It feels great. But anyways, I digress. So yeah.
So this digital transformation and, so the startups that are out there that are watching this, the VCs that are out there, just how important do you think being able to get your brand across, your message across, to be part of these types of events, how important do you think it is today in terms of the whole scope of things? Let's look at a year ago. I mean, if we would have told me we would be doing this every day, I would have said, come on, you're crazy. But today, it feels normal. But from your opinion, what do you think?
Yeah, so go back a year ago. A year ago, you went to events as an attendee to network, to do business development. In some cases, those that were lucky enough, were showcasing or presenting their product and or speaking on stage, right? Something we would do. Um, but you were very selective usually, right? Specifically, if you had a small budget as a startup, you want to pick your right ones. And even as an investor, you have a finite amount of time. And so you have to pick those events very specifically. And so maybe we would go to a handful of events per year, and that was it. And you also have to incorporate travel and all the things. Come full circle. Now going into 2021 and looking at what we just learned here in 2020, it's do or die. And I put that out there very, very bluntly because in this digital transformation, in the digitization of everything we've just gone through, and as Gary and I have spoken about for the audience, this is not just a one-year thing. This is a decades-long practice we're going to be having, and 2020 was just the acceleration of it. And that's true to form as two people who have been in this area of innovation for a number of years. But in 2020 and going forward, it's absolutely paramount to be involved in it. It's paramount to be speaking. It's paramount to be pitching. It's paramount to be hosting these types of events because you now can reach audiences anywhere at any time, all over the place of any specialty. And I think I told you this at one point, is if I was running a startup right now, the reason I would do these hands down is you never know who's listening. You can now get a hold of and in front of audiences you never could, faster than ever. You have a recording of that so you can continue to reuse that and rehash it as additional content. And it just continues to refine that pitch. Plus you get to build relationships with people, interview or investors like yourself and others that you would never have the chance to see more than once.
Kyle, I mean, the people that I've met, it's amazing. Some of the wealthiest people in the world that are tied to family offices that after following up with folks, I find out who they really are, and it's really incredible. I mean, it's like from all walks of life, Richard Branson's partner here, one of the wealthiest families in Germany there, one of the wealthiest families in Indonesia here, Hong Kong. I mean, you name it. It's just that possibility. It would take years in the trusted network to go out and do it. I mean, I've been in Silicon Valley almost 35 years, and I have a broad network, but this is a lot different because it's broader and faster. Hey, have you done much with Bangladesh? What's going on with the ecosystem there?
I have not. I know, a lot in general with India. We just got off a call earlier this morning around some activities in India. And I will say this. So India as a whole is going through its own transformation, its own digitization. I learned yesterday that, from a medical record standpoint, the government has actually put in place to digitize and create a digital medical record for all residents of the entire country. So 1.4 plus billion people.
I was on there. I heard that too.
Anuj told us.
Yeah,
shout out to Anuj.
Well, here's the thing. In Bangladesh, there are 1 million in this startup, right? So it's a separate country, 1 million in that environment. It's just incredible. So it's like there's the untapped regions, like Russia was back in 2000 when I first started going over. There's untapped opportunities, and people don't even think about. I was talking to Bill Reichard from Garage and Pegasus, and he said, "Oh, Gary, we have just opened an office in Bangladesh." I said, "Really?" Because one of my partners is from Bangladesh, and it's a vibrant community. So that's one of the other interesting things that we find out through this digital transformation are these opportunities that you didn't even know existed before.
And you bring up a great point. So a year ago, we lived in a box. We lived within our four walls, and we stepped out of that box every now and then. As again, I said, we would travel and go other places. Now today, Pandora's box has been open, and it brings to light, if you're open to it, keyword if, but you really should be open to so many possibilities. Where exactly to your point, you can learn about new emerging markets in regions around the world and the activities, not just learn about them, but the actual activities that are happening on the ground from those that are doing it.
I agree. Yeah.
On the flip side, you can now see more deals, more business partnerships, more people than you ever could imagine because everyone is looking for a way to connect in a world that they cannot connect as physical as once before.
Agreed.
And I mean, why let that go to side? Whether you're an executive, whether you're an investor, whether you're an entrepreneur. Now, the investor side, I will say, look, I understand you have a mandate and you have a thesis that may say that you can't invest in certain regions, but that also, that also should open your eyes towards the future thesis, to the future mandate on how you may want to evolve that, right? Looking at an industry like fintech, for instance, and saying, oh, well, we only do deals in the Valley, just as an example. Fintech's everywhere. You would do yourself a disservice, right? I mean, you and I have talked to plenty of people. I mean, you do yourself a disservice to not look at Latin America, but you haven't been to Latin America. So how can you know what's happening? Well, these types of forums, these types of roundtables, these are the areas that you can do that. You would also want to look at so many other areas. I mean, look at India, going back to that. You've got a company, Kasha right now, or Cash, I think is how it's pronounced, that's putting 22 ATMs, digital currency ATMs, into India, and is looking to expand that out to over 100 in the next year. I mean, again, there's opportunity everywhere. It's just, where do you want to focus, and how can you focus your time in these new areas? And thankfully, this digital transformation has brought us that opportunity.
What about the VCs? I remember back in April timeframe, the VCs were reluctant to invest, and they're not sure, everything's on hold. What do you think the state of the VCs investment is today compared to April, when things were basically at a standstill? What do you think?
So for the entrepreneurs, let me go back in time. So let's go back to April. So the reason this happened, and the reason why you heard this, and the reason why you might have gotten some pushback is just to understand and break it down, is there was a very big unknown that got thrown in. There was a big wrench that got thrown into everything, as we all know. And so what every investor did was say, pause. Let's focus. Let's make sure our investments, let's make sure our founders, let's make sure our founder and their teams are okay, and that together we understand how to talk through this and how to potentially navigate it. So what it went to is, let's take care of the family.
Yeah.
Okay. April and May was taking care of the family. And what you need to do as entrepreneurs that are listening, you need to look back when you talk to an investor today. So fast forward, you need to ask how investors dealt with that. And when you talk to their other portfolio companies in your diligence, see if they're the right investor for you, ask them how they support it. How did your investors support you during this, very troubled, dark time? How did they help you? How did they support you? Were they there? Did they write checks? Did they, help bring in new resources? Ask them these questions, because it's very important and very, very wonderful to have investors that support you during those times. Now, taking a step forward, going into May and June was this time of, okay, everything's starting to kind of get back into the right path, or everyone's okay, we're operating. What's next? What does the future look like? How long does all of this stuff happen? And how should we be laying our bets to play it? Right? Our industry's in trouble, our other industries thriving that we haven't thought about. So May, June, and part of July, the summer, was a coordination or rethinking of the thesis that many investors had, and understanding again where everything was. And then July and August, more people started talking, started joining forums like Gary and I have done many times, and others, and started seeing new opportunity and hearing different things and hearing where things were going, and started kind of rounding that curve into Q3, into September, and saying, okay, here's where it's time to start placing the bets. Again, as investors bet, 3, 5, 10 years into the future, not 6 months. So you need to understand where things are going. So for entrepreneurs, that's what happened. And now, Gary, to your question, where things are, I think investors are more open than ever, and are really looking at the digital transformation, but really the digitization of everything, and seeing where those focuses are. They're looking at future forward industries they hadn't maybe thought about before, and are considering how technology has to play a role, not will, but has to play a role. And then when you look at something like supply chain, or just using that as a term, when they're looking at, companies are looking at the entire value chain end to end. So if something does happen, right, the unfortunate, how will the company continue to progress?
toilet paper.
Yeah, toilet paper's gone. How does the company proceed?
Craziest thing, right? I mean, now I think about it, it's funny, but it wasn't funny at the time because I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I'm not going to be using a magazine. I'm not be taking a shower every day.
It was,
you know what I mean? This is crazy. I mean, but think about how affected it became, how much it impacted everybody. Then you got a hand sanitizer. I mean, I bought towels. I bought at a Marine Supply for like 4 times as much because I wanted to have paper towels. I said, I don't care what it costs. I want towels, you know? So, yeah. I mean, but that's a right kind of point because through the digital transformation, we didn't have transparency into the supply chain. And we understand now that we're not invincible, right? As much technology we have, we better understand that the simple things can kill us. And that's one of them. Food, you know, paper, all kinds of different things.
Well, and as businesses and as entrepreneurs, we're not invincible, right? Again, going back to that point of April and May, as entrepreneurs, no one really knew what was happening. And no one knew how to navigate it. You had to talk, you had to think through it. You had your dark days, you had your cloudy days, you had your bright days. Everyone went through the exact same thing. And the way we all got through it, whether it was successfully or not, was talking through all of that, getting experience and bouncing ideas and testing. I mean, the companies that come out of that time that will really thrive are the ones that just tested, saw the opportunity, and just kept doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
That's it. They didn't pause. They just they took their second, recalibrated, and then went until they found what worked. Right. The ones that didn't survive, you know what? Some of them may not have survived in the future. That's the unfortunate piece. Their industry may have changed. Things may have not gone their way. But also, again, recalibration and just testing, trying, you have to do those types of things as well. And as investors, again, some bad bets may have been made, but also some great bets have been made as well, as so many things have now played true as to what we thought would happen, you know, come the end of 2020.
Sounds great. Well, Kyle, we're at the top of the segment, and I wanted you to give your final thoughts, closing thoughts, and where people can reach you.
I love it. Well, first and foremost, an enormous honor to be on the other side of the table with Gary Fowler and getting questions.
It's asking the questions. I'm humbled, Kyle, that you're here.
So thank you. Thank you
immensely.
Thank you. So many heart emojis left and right over here. But yeah, in terms of closing thoughts, I mean, Gary, you and I talk about this, and honestly, it's probably been more ingrained in me because of you that, you know, the digitization of everything is the future. It's not what is to come. It is what is here, and it is what is the future. Those that are looking to make investments or building, look at 2020 as a foundational year towards the next decade and what we will be building and what we will need and where things will go for the next 10 years. Because I can tell you, I am not a fortune teller. I do not have a magic 8-ball, but I can tell you, I think the next 10 years, based on what we just went through and what we've seen accelerated, next 10 years are going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see technology enter our lives in ways we have only dreamt of. We've only seen in science fiction. It's now going to become true. And that word technology will actually start to disappear in our daily lives, and everything will just become very natural, and it's going to get exciting. And
normal.
And normal. It's going to be normal. It's going to be a part of the process. You know, toilet paper will just show up. With that being said, everyone, you know, again, thank you, Gary. You can find me online everywhere on my handle right there at Kyle Ellicott. You know, definitely check me out on LinkedIn, reach out, add context where you might have found me as well. And from there, I can connect you to the various companies and things that Gary mentioned as well. And do have a show that Gary joins every day called VCTV. So definitely check us out as well. And check out Topio Networks and a number of other great companies as well. So, yeah.
Kyle, thank you very much. It's a great honor and a privilege to have you here today. I appreciate joining, and I'll see you soon, my friend.
Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Good morning.
Good morning, Joey. I wanted to introduce Joey. So, Joey, it's great to see you today. It's fantastic. So, you know, I got to tell you, you know, you've got an amazing background. So from University of Pennsylvania and NextJets to where you are today. So, I mean, it's fascinating. So, can you do a little introduction of yourself? It would be great for my audience today.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And thank you very much for having me. But next time, can I go first? Because following Kyle, that's a tough act to follow. That is a super.
I'm sorry about, we got enraptured. Yeah. Kyle. Yeah, you've had conversations with Kyle.
He's talk about impressive. I mean, I got nothing. So, I can give a quick sort of run through. I'm from Dallas, Texas. And my family was always in the construction business, home building business, land development. And I knew that I would always want to kind of run my own show and I've really tried a lot of different things. Started out in a home building and land development business, did that for a number of years, and sort of early internet said, hey, this is exciting. I need to get in on this, and started several other businesses. In the technology space. I've had a payments company. I've had a transportation logistics company, which you mentioned, called NextJet, where we utilize commercial airlines, excess cargo capacity, and courier network throughout the country to deliver packages same day. That was an exciting venture. And I've done a lot of other things. And I've recently had an ad tech company that was a lot of fun. And now on to Benji, which is the new one in
Meteora. You sold that, correct?
I'm sorry.
Meteora.
So sold Meteora. Meteora was it was a lot of fun. That was a programmatic display and business doing advertising, where everybody on here is probably saying, "Oh my gosh, you're that creepy guy that chases me around when I forget to buy the Ray-Bans." And you show me 100 ads to remind me to buy the Ray-Bans. And I will say that was a lot of fun, and people are always, giving you grief about how we're trolling them on the internet. But then when they start buying the products and they start saying, wow, it was so convenient. But I remembered I wanted to buy that pillow.
That's the deal, right? I don't know. That's one of the things we talk about a lot. It's like people bitch about all the things put in front of them. But honestly, I love it. For one of my cars, I needed to get shocks. I thought, this is going to be a pain in the rear end. I got to look all over. I got to go to Amazon, the Parts Zone, parts.com, all this. But I just want to get shocks. What happens? I'm looking, shocks start appearing on Facebook. And it made my life so much easier. So, but we're inundated with data all the time. It's upon us. How in the world? Think about it. Just with your email, you get, the average person has 300,000 items within their personal cloud. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. That number doubles every year. In 5 years, it'll be 10 million items with the Internet of Things. How in the world, today, how many people say, I know that file exists, but I can't find it? Why? I've either forgotten the location or forgotten the keywords. Slack, Facebook, Telegram, LinkedIn. I don't know if you're the same with me. It's like, it's crazy. So having ads come over that make life easier, I think it's a great thing. Because people buy.
One of the things that we were excited about with that, and again with programmatic, and when you can get deep into the data like you're talking about, is we can really show you the things that you want and show you the things that you're interested in, and we can sort of cull through. If all your kids are grown, we're not going to show you diaper ads, right? So it is highly targeted, and it's highly specific to your needs for the most part. And so that's kind of one of the exciting things about that. But that was a lot of fun, and that sort of moved into Benji, which is our socially curated streaming TV program where people go and find great things to watch, great streaming content through their friends and those kinds of things. So it was kind of an interesting segue, because we will be in the data play again, right? We will be in the advertising world again, because those are some of the different ways that will monetize this new business. And so sort of each thing sort of led to the next one in terms of some of my experience and some of getting kicked in the teeth, and you learn to move to the next thing and to the next thing. Is kind of how my career has gone. A lot of getting kicked in the teeth, by the way.
Well, sometimes sometimes it happens, right? So we call it a pivot. We call it this. We call it that. I've been there a few times. So you went to the University of Pennsylvania, right? 38th and Walnut, and you took your journey from there. What was the first company that you had out of University of Pennsylvania?
Embarrassingly so, I'll have to say, I started a company in the recycling business. It was called Recycling Collections Company. I was 22. There was no systematic pickup and of recycling recyclables in Dallas, Texas. No one was doing it. So we started, I say we, it was just me. And I literally started driving around, picking up people's recycling for free to then take it to the recycling facilities. So I had one station wagon, then I got a truck, and then I got a couple of people helping me. Well, then all of a sudden and I was like, hey, this is what you do, right? I went door to door with flyers, asking people if they wanted to do it. I bought bags. So they had bottle bags and bags for the paper. And it was really actually a lot of fun. And then within 9 months of this, the city decides that, hey, that's probably a good idea. Came through, and many of the cities in Dallas and started doing it. So a little hard to compete when they have all the big trucks and and they're obviously free as well, kind of. I guess they put it on your water bill. But that was the very first thing I did, and I learned a lot in a very, very short amount of time, because I think that business lasted about 7 or 8 months. And I destroyed the station wagon too, because I put 9,000 tons of trash in the back of it, and ended up leaving it on a highway. I did get it off the highway, but it was bottomed out for 50 miles with, so much newspaper you couldn't believe it. The smell never went away. That was when people, read newspapers. Like, this was way before reading online.
Yeah, amazing. No, my first startup, I did it coming right out of graduate school. And I told my dad I wanted to go back to medical school, so out of psychology, and I decided, I want to do something totally different. So I said, I want to design houses. So I started to design and build houses, and I would have an architect review to make sure there weren't problems, and go through my structural engineer. And I saw, this is kind of fun. Well, it started to take off, and I didn't realize that I hit the sweet spot. It was right after there'd been a financial crisis. There was pent-up demand because interest rates were really high. And it happened to be that I bought some land in front of the hospital. I just, as a joke, said Pill Hill for doctors. Well, it just happens that doctors had just moved into the area and wanting to buy nice houses. So they started to go like crazy. And it wasn't because you're really smart. It's just because there was a lot of pent-up demand. So I'm like, wow, this is great. I'm ruling it. I'm going to be the Devasta Homes or whatever of the world. And little you to know, sometime later, it's not as easy as you think, right? And when you get shut down, you can get shut down pretty hard. And that's
yes. Raw land and lots in a tough economy. You have raw land, or you have home building sites. When things go soft and cold, they go very soft and very cold.
Stone cold. I was very cold. The interest rates,
and it's funny. That was my next thing.
Really? Interesting. And so you were doing home building
after the recycling business. Yeah, I started right after the recycling thing didn't work. I started driving around and just looking for opportunities. And to your point, very much in the same time frame, there was kind of an economic recession, and there was a lot of opportunity. A lot of things had gone bad and gone back to banks, and we had the opportunity to buy some very inexpensive lots at the time in suburbs of Dallas. And my first deal, I was driving around, saw a piece of land. The grass was like 8 feet tall because no one had mowed it, because no one was paying for it. And I got out, I started walking around, I saw a sign that was like dug in the mud but way under the grass. Called the guy, and I said, is this still available? And he said, yes. And I said, here's my offer. And I had no money, but I made an offer. He accepted it. And I said, now I need to go figure out how to do this business because I just bought 30 lots.
Exactly. Exactly. Same here with me. I was driving around. I saw this land. So the first deal, I saw this land and I thought, who owns it? So I went down to the records and looked it up. It happened to be this big, this guy was a cable baron. And I just hit it off with him. The mistake I made is I said I only wanted to buy 3 lots. I should have bought the whole thing and put a first right of refusal. But I went through it too. You know, you go down through and, you know, and that's part of being an entrepreneur, isn't it? It's pivoting. You don't let the recycle stuff shuts down. You pivot and you do something else. And it's having that optimism and passion to want to move forward and do something incredible. Now, I applaud you. I've been through it a few times myself, actually, more than a few, 16 now.
Well, yeah, and I obviously know your background, and it's incredibly impressive. And yeah, for people that that want to get in this game, it is definitely not for the squeamish. You know, there's a lot of anxiety all the time. When things are great, there's anxiety. Or can we keep it going? Can it stay great? When things are terrible, there's a lot of anxiety. How do we make it great? And when it's in the middle, you're like, why isn't it awful or why isn't it great? I mean, so there's anxiety across the entire spectrum, when you're doing this. But I will say, and I know that people always appreciate this, I mean, you have a tremendous amount of freedom when you run your own company. You're also, at the same time, you're always working for somebody, right? You're working for your investors. You're working for your board of directors. You're working for your employees. So when you say you're really running your own show, you kind of are, but you're the last guy to get anything, right? You want to serve everybody else and make sure everybody else is happy. And then if there's anything left, you get a little of it. And that's sort of the approach and attitude, I think, guys like us and Kyle on the phone. I mean, that's how we all sort of live, right? We're looking at the people around us and saying, we're working twice as hard to make sure all of you can have the things we promised.
I agree 100%. When I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning having calls over in Asia, I'm thinking the same thing to myself. It's like, wait a second, I'm up at 4 in the morning having this call. Then I have another call at 6. Then I got another call at 7. But you know something? My wife says to me, why do you do it? You're killing yourself. I said, but I love it. It's electricity. It's fun. It's exciting. Who wants to have a boring life? I mean, and to put a little dent in the universe, when I did my first accelerator in Russia, people said it couldn't be done. Joey, couldn't be done. Why would you ever go to Russia? This is in 2000. Russia's this, Russia's that. I said, because this is the most interesting. I want to see what it's like. And I went over there and I was fascinated. I was enchanted. And all of a sudden we started this little accelerator, took off. All of a sudden this whole community started to take off. And you look at it now and it's like it's a given. There's all these startups in a particular country, but you were right at the beginning of it. And it's amazing. One person, right, can make a dent in the universe. When you did your recycling, you probably didn't know that it was going to take off. Yeah, it lasted 7 months, but you hit a sweet spot. And guess what? Competitors come in, right? Because they see there's an opportunity. Sure. But that's part of the adventure. So now it's interesting. So what's on, if you look at the future for yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want to be doing?
That's a great question. Maybe exhale one time in the next, if you ask me specifically in 5 years, maybe let my shoulders down for like 20 seconds before I figure out the next thing. I promised my wife and kids I wouldn't do another startup after this one, but I think I promised them 2 startups ago and then the last one ago. So I've always had my fingers crossed though when I make that promise, like, hey, we'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, this one is brand new. Benji, the one we is brand new. We launched it in essentially 1st of October. 1st of September. So it's really brand new and really exciting. But we're having a lot of fun with that. And if I can continue to have a great time with this one, I think it can grow to be a massive company with lots of people, working here, lots of people enjoying the app. The subject matter being in entertainment and streaming is so much fun and people can't get enough of it. And I guess even more accentuated with the COVID situation. But I honestly, Gary, I'd love to see in 5 years, I'm still running this thing and still having a good time with it and building it, into a true utility that we think it could be. So I don't have my eyes on the next thing yet. because I'm really 100% hunkered down on this one. But I'm always, kind of looking to see what else is out there. I mean, you got to always be looking to make sure that, you're seeing all the other opportunities out there and how they might fit with what you're doing or what other people are doing to, starting something. So I'm always open. But I think to answer the question specifically, in 5 years, I expect to still be running this and having a great time with it. And obviously, it'll be in a very different place in 5 years. It won't be the, panicking about the things we panic about when they're brand new startups. It'll be new panics, right?
Yeah.
The next set of panicking, the more mature panicking.
Yeah, sure. The one thing, Joe,
Right.
I don't know about you, but one thing, when I look at when's the time for me to come out of a company, when I start to hear people say, let's have a meeting to have a meeting. And we start to have meetings about meetings, I start to think this is probably the time that I need to move on to the next one, and bring somebody else that's more operationally oriented to do it.
Well, I can answer that. For me, when there's an HR department, that's when I need to go. There's an HR person, that's fantastic. But if there's an HR department, I need to move on or just take a different role in the company. Because HR department means you've achieved what you wanted to, but it's becoming a little more of a business and a little less of your entrepreneurial baby.
It's isn't it interesting to see companies that you've founded or co-founded or been the original team of take off and become these crazy successes, and you look back and you remember the days when you were struggling, it was hard, and you're flying all over for meetings to set them up, and then all of a sudden the company's become world renowned. It's crazy, actually. Yeah, it's amazing. So what are your final thoughts, Joey, in terms of, we have entrepreneurs, we have startups from all over the world that watch this show. I guess there's actually three parts. One is, if you need any help, we have a lot of people that are viewers of our show. So that would be one. Two is, what do you think, the future holds in terms of, where we are today, online, a digital transformation, and what kind of things, what do you think in terms of final thoughts that you would leave with the audience for the startups? What could you say is a couple of pointers to move forward?
Well, I will say this. For me, this is a fantastic time to be a startup. It's a fantastic time to be an entrepreneur. It's a fantastic time to take the risk, because it always is, and it never is, right? And if you have an idea and you have a thought and you have the guts to do it,
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I don't know what just happened. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you. Maybe your AirPods are running out of juice.
No, I'm good now. I got a spam call that came through. So I think, just to sort of to kind of end this, I think, I talk to young people all the time. I talk to would-be entrepreneurs that have ideas, that have thoughts. It's incredibly hard, but everything is. And if you're passionate and you're willing to do the things you just said, Gary, and again, I know with respect to COVID, but I mean, I laugh about one of my startups in, let's say, 99, 2000, 2001. I was on a plane 3 or 4 days a week, meeting investors, meeting companies, meeting, doing business development, doing all the things you have to do. And if you're ready for that, you should do it, because there's never a good time and there's never a bad time. You just need to get out there. I think in terms of the digital transformation, I was listening to Kyle, very carefully, and I gotta say, I mean, I completely agree with him. I mean, things are, they're moving at the speed of sound, and it's going to continue to be more and more, I mean, we're going to see everything continue to be more and more digitized, more and more digital. Whatever's left that's not will be. And in the stat you mentioned a few minutes ago about all the things that we had 20 years ago, like sort of what it would have been the cloud, today is, I don't even know what the factor is on the multiple of that, but it's an amazing thing. So, I tell, young people all the time and would-be entrepreneurs, hey, reach out, call me. I might not be able to help you with your deal, but I can certainly, say, hey, if you think this is the right time and your family's behind you, go get them, because we need it. We need innovation all the time. We need people out there, making a difference. And, you never know who's going to be the next, whatever it is, but, coming up with fantastic ideas and bringing them to market. That's, what this country's been built on, and we need it. We always need it.
Agree. How do people reach you, Joey? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
JPL@bingie.tv, JPL@bingie.tv, BINGIE. That is the best way to reach me, JPL@bingie.tv. And I'm incredibly responsive. That's a big thing for me. I cycle through it quick. And when you talk about 4 a.m, that's usually like my first anxiety attack. Then I kind of go back to sleep for 30 minutes. Then I'm up.
Yeah, same here. I get up, have my meeting. I could sleep for 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour and back up again. I can't sleep. I got to move forward. Joey, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. It's great to see you again, and I really appreciate it. Audience.
Gary, this has been a blast. It's been a blast. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Audience, stay tuned. We'll be back next week. I appreciate it. And GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, is here for you. Thank you very much.